What's up guys, WhoNeedsMeta here. Before we start today's video, I want to remind everyone of the Retro Reborn charity event in Toledo, Ohio on February 28th. It's a REDU format tournament. I'm really excited for this event. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm very excited that we're able to put it on. So the signups will be in the description. If you are unable to attend, but you want to order something to help out, you can order the charity mat, and we will ship that to you. But you can order the mat if you can't attend, but you still want to donate to charity and you want something cool in return. This is the mat. It's really, really well designed, and I'm very, very excited for this event, and I hope to see everybody there. So today we're going to be talking about the RRC Multi-Day 4 top 8 decks, just kind of going over the list, seeing, you know, what's being played, what's not being played, things like that. Starting out with the top 8. 2 Hero Beat, 2 Wind Up, 2 Cast Dragons, 1 Inzektor, which won it, and 1 Dino Rabbit, which was second. Things to consider that were not in the top cut. Dark World, which I believe was only 1, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, only 1. The big one for me that was odd was Geargia. We had 6 Geargia enter. No top cut. It's weird seeing Dino Rabbit played as like the most represented deck. That's definitely odd. But yeah, not seeing Geargia in the top 8 is pretty interesting. So no agent either. It's interesting with agents because, like, if Geargia is good, then Trooper is bad. If Hero Beat is good, then Trooper is good. So there's the 2 different variants. So you kind of like have to flip a coin on which one you want to play, which one you think, because like this trades well. Card Trooper trades well with Thunder King and Alias, but it doesn't trade well with Armor. So it's interesting. So we'll just go ahead and get right into all the top 8 lists. Starting with Inzektors, the thing that I found interesting in the list is the BLS 3 Veiler 1 Raikou. I side decked 1 Raikou this week at locals. Unfortunately, I did draw it once and it got like Dark Hole immediately. So it ate a Dark Hole. I do think that the deck needs some sort of follow-up whenever your play falls apart. Especially, so it used to be the trap lineup where Compulses, T-Roars, and Calls were the very common trap lineup, and we're not seeing Compulses. I did find Compulse pretty underwhelming when I was playing the deck recently. I do still like T-Roar, but I think T-Roar is important for this deck whenever you don't... Wait, so to back up a little bit, there's either you play Tomato or you play Tour Guide, and this list is playing both. So your monster lineup is fairly small, so you had to compulse your own guy because typically you didn't have follow-up. If, let's say, you summoned a Centipede and it got Veilered, having that follow-up was pretty tough, so you could just compulse the Centipede back to your hand and then do it again next turn. Whereas here, you have a little bit more resilience in your monster lineup. The sacrifice is the trap lineup is just smaller. That's just what it is. And then you lose Dark Hole out of the main board. And you have to go up to 41, and you also don't have Card Car. I also agree. I've seen lists play the Tomatoes, but not the one Armageddon Knight. I think if you're playing Tomato, you should always be playing Armageddon Knight. The interesting thing about the Tomato package with the Sangan is it does conflict with the D-Fissures in the side. I had times where I wanted to put the D-Fissures in, and I couldn't, or I had to like sacrifice part of this engine to put the D-Fissures in because, again, in some matchups it is just a blowout. Also, losing one of your calls, going from 3 Call the Haunted to 2 Call the Haunted, 2 Sword to 1 Sword. You do lose a little bit of your engine, but if you're finding like, hey, I never needed the 3rd Call or I never needed the 2nd Sword, and it was just, they're cards that I've heard referred to as training wheels, and that's like, I've been looking for a good term for cards that you play when you need something. Where you're just not comfortable enough for the deck and you need that safety blanket card. Training Wheels cards is a good name to call it. That's kind of like what I refer to, like Curse of Dragon in Heretics, where like it's a Training Wheels card. Like you should be able to make a rank 5 or get everything to 6 if you know your combos in and out. But if you're like stuck in the middle of a combo and you need to just make a rank 5 and you don't have the level modulation, you just have to play Curse of Dragon. Like, it's a Training Wheels card. You shouldn't need it. Pokemon has that a lot, where you play multiples of a card where you should realistically know how to navigate getting away with one of. So I'm not sure if that's being pulled from Pokemon or if that's just kind of a coincidence, but that is something that is much more common over there. 2 Messenger piece in the main is actually pretty cool. This is taken from some of the wind-up ideas. A lot of wind-up stuff is is maining this. It's kind of 50-50 on it. And then one torrential, and then no solemn judgment. I think we're just seeing, like, we have the MSTs for like the amount of solemns. And just Forbidden Lance, we're just seeing like the rise of this card in like almost everything. Like, this card is nuts for... We realize that, like, hey, we just need to protect our guys. But with the rise of Forbidden Lance, we see more Veilers because, you know, it's like a cyclical thing. Well, it's like, well, if they're just going to protect themselves from my trap cards, I'll play less traps and I'll play Veiler because you can't Lance a Veiler. It is what it is. It's just interesting to see the evolution of the format. And it's so in its infancy. Like, yeah, me and my friends have been playing this format for like 8 years, but at that time, like at the same time, it's like almost 9 years now. My goodness. At the same time, though, it's like, okay, that's a small group. Like, we don't have like the big results of more people pushing the format forward. So now we do, and it's interesting to see what people are going to come up with. Next up is the second place Macro Rabbit list. This is pretty interesting because it is main decking the macro. Again, this card, like, if Geargia is going to be the best deck, which I think it is, but again, going by this results, it's just, it isn't. Like, it did not show up in the top 8. Then maybe the macro is correct in the main, but I just found it not as good in as many matchups. It's bad late game against Chaos Dragons, which I think is a matchup that this deck kind of just forfeits, essentially, if you don't open this card and they don't have an out. But I was playing a deck, and I had 3 macro in post board against that deck, and they just always had a Raikou, always had an MST. I guess this does give you like an edge up game 1, but even Chaos Dragons are seeing more than 1 MST in the main now. It used to be, you know, 0 or 1, and you just relied on your Lilas and Raikous, and now we're just seeing this card played more in that deck. So it's like, maybe the macro just isn't going to stick because, you know, it just happens. Book of Moon I've seen being cut from lists recently. No Night Assailant in this list. I can kind of agree with that. It's 50-50 for me. Like, I understand, especially like if you're gonna play the macro Cosmos, maybe Night Assailant's just like a little better. But again, you're not always gonna have macros. The same reason why those lists like still play Monster Reborn. Like, you're not always gonna have it. Maybe not playing Pot of Avarice obviously makes sense. I don't even think you should be playing Pot of Avarice, even if you're not maining macro. Like, I tested the card recently, and I just found it to be so cheeks in this deck. It just didn't come up to the point where I was like, man, this is so good. Like, I don't know. It just didn't feel necessary. So I agree with the no Pot of Avarice. 3 Lance, 3 Space is pretty interesting rather than 3-2. But if we're going to see, again, a Geargia meta or a heavy back row meta, this deck has always played 3 Lance, though. This is the Lance deck. So it makes sense to see Lance in here. The other decks is where it's become a little bit more prevalent. But the Emptinesses in the side are the only other, like, really weird thing in this list. Marrowgeist in the list that mains macro is kind of interesting, although I do like it for the Gozen match on the Cabazols. Just having the ability to make something so you don't lose your entire board because you're just going to die in the end phase. So having something to go into Gozen match. This card is normally Kachi Kochi Dragon. If you're not playing this, like, that's like your choices essentially. Your Utopia Ray if you want to play that, but I don't know. Yeah, so this isn't even on the Utopia, so yeah, no Utopia. Emptiness is interesting. I'd like to see more of this. I just don't know how good this card is in this format. Obviously, it's really good backed up by Elagia, but no. I'd like to see more testing with it. I've seen it in Tengu a little bit too because it's in there. But there's just so many ways. Again, your first card is always just going to get space, and then I think good players game 2 and 3 aren't going to blind space because they're going to know that every single deck by this point has a floodgate that will shut them out of the game. I think the only one, again, that doesn't is Geargia, which I don't even think Emptiness is very good against. So, yeah, standard for the most part on this one. The main deck macros are interesting as opposed to something else. So, we'll see what Rabbit lists look like going forward. Next up, top 4 Bubble Beat. I've seen lists playing 3 Bubble Man, and I just don't feel like that's correct. I feel like it's so easy to just end up with multiples of this card, or where you're like resolving the Shining, and you're like, I don't know if I want to add all these monsters because it's just going to break my hand with these Bubble Man, and I'm just going to not be able to make my power plays. I've also seen lists going away from cards like Gemspark, and it's cool to see that that's still around. I do think that's correct. The cool part about this deck that I want to talk about, there's a few things. One, in the main deck, it's the double trap stun. There are the triple Bubble Man lists and no Gemspark lists are the lists that are essentially all in on cards like Excalibur and Blade Armor. and just trying to end the game out of nowhere. And like that's like your hero lives variant essentially. And they just like this variant is like, oh, if I have it, I have the ability to go, okay, trap stun in it, like with my heavy, like I can have heavy and I have 2 trap stuns, so I have 3 cards that allow me to just blow through the end of the game, make my weird miracle, bubble man, Excalibur, blade armor, OTK list, like push, and go for game. And then you can just play a standard hero beat game when you don't have it, which I think is really good. I think this is correct. I could be proven wrong. I could be like hero lives could be the actual better way to play the deck. Obviously, it has like the higher ceiling, but here you have a good hybrid, and I think the trap stuns are a really cool inclusion to say, hey, I have the play, I have the Call the Haunted play with Stratos. I could do my play and do my miracle, make my 2 XYZs. Where you go, you know, Stratos, special bubble man, detach, call Stratos, special bubble man, make a guy, and then miracle, and then I have like 10,000 damage or over 10,000 damage on the board. The 2 Excal is interesting, and if you're wondering about this is what me and my friends, I guess the cat's out of the bag. We've been kind of holding this close to the vest here. I call this the hidden technology. It's Queen Dragon Djinn is a generic rank 4 that is a deck dev target. So this is your blowout against windups. I don't necessarily know if it's a blowout against Geargia yet. I think, like we've talked about it in Geargia, playing this card and the 2 deck devs again, because that deck can make a rank 4 and not lose its momentum. Like if you do it in Dino Rabbit, like if your rank 4 needs to stick, you can't just be like yeeting it off for a deck dev because you typically don't have enough monsters for follow up and enough power plays. Where here you have Miracle, you have Call, you have E-Call and Rhoda for like searchability and stuff, so you have the ability to get to more monsters. You have like Thunder King as an actual like standalone sticky monster, so it can play the forbidden technology as we call it. Not a lot of decks can. I think it's reserved basically for this and maybe for Geargia. I've tried it and it didn't come up to where I was like, okay, I didn't like play against windups with it yet, so I haven't tested it against windups, but I'd be interested to see if this like ever pops off or ever it popped off in the event. Everything else is relatively standard except the Our Righteous Justice is kind of the more backer removal. It's kind of cool. Interesting card. I don't know necessarily if you need it, but I'm sure it'll catch a few people off guard. But yeah, cool inclusion if you got it. Everything else seems to be fairly standard. You have all your targets for your super poly. You know, Nova Master is used to blow through Zen mains with your super polys and whatnot. But yeah, outside of the forbidden technology, fairly standard, cool trap stuns. Next up in top 4 is also Hero Beat. This list includes the Honest as the 10th monster. I do like Honest. I think it's pretty cool. Whether or not it's needed now, I don't necessarily know. This list is also including the 1 Hero Blast. This was like almost an auto 2 of inclusion, but with the calls, you're less likely to resolve the Hero Blast. You're more likely going to be using Call the Haunted on something. Normally you're obviously calling for Stratos and then Hero Blasting for Alias, so it is a little different, and you're like the targets most of the time don't conflict. But banishing for Miracle, this being stuck under a blade armor because you want to detach the Stratos for your calls makes sense. Again, you want to put the Stratos in your graveyard so you have the option to reborn or call it if you draw it. Obviously, if you already preemptively have the Hero Blast and you detach the Alias, you're kind of selling the Hero Blast. You're basically saying, hey, I have it. That's another thing to keep in mind when playing this format. It's very easy to tell what your opponent has by what they detach in a couple different matchups. A lot of times, like especially like your Geargiators, like I just want whatever in my graveyard, like whatever I don't have the target for Accelerator. But yeah, this is the same 9 monsters plus a Honest, the exact same spell lineup. I don't know if there's much variance in the Hero Beat spell lineup outside of how many MSTs you play, especially if you're on the Gem Sparks. This list is not on the Trap Sun. It's a little bit more of a traditional trap lineup, which is fine with the Hero Blast. And then the extra deck is fairly similar. We're not seeing double Excal. This is, I'm sure, going to be standard going across the board. I like System Down. I think this card is really cool. Dealing with like wider Geargia boards is pretty good. Only 1 Super Poly instead of 2. Outside of that, nothing too much to say on this list. It's just another one of those pretty standard bubble beat lists that doesn't have access to the trap stuns for OTK, but has just like a different trap line. It has the Honest to protect the Thunder King. So it's whether or not you want to try and go for your big pushes, or if you want to try and like play a little bit more defensively by Honesting your Thunder King or your Alias and using removal that way. Next up, we have our first wind-up list. This is the pretty standard wind-up monster lineup. Nothing crazy like Soldier or Warrior, which are used to typically just like beat over armor, beat over Thunder King for the Soldier, and then the Warrior you use to like make rank 4s. Rank 4s aren't super great in this format. They're okay. You have like obviously the specialty ones, Lagi, Dolka, Challenger, Blade Armor, but here we don't really have access to those. So opted to go with the Messenger of Peace variant, which is fairly popular. Windups, Duality is another odd card because like you need to be able to set up with 2 cards. So it's I don't know if you play it. So I do like the inclusion. We tried it in Dino Rabbit as the idea, and like we're kind of going away from it. Like, hey, is this card really that good? I don't know, especially in a special summon deck. Here, you can kind of stall. You do have a smaller trap lineup typically than what you'd see in Dino Rabbit, but you can kind of just like set a Sangan or like use your Rabbit and your Factory, and this is really what gets your engine going. So Duality, I would like to see if more lists are going to play this. I think Upstart's better, personally. It allows you to just kind of go off whenever you can, and I believe Oscar played that in his list. And that's something that I tried years ago and I really liked. So standard 10 traps, nothing too crazy. The Fiendish Chains are like almost reserved for windups at this point. It's kind of odd to see like this deck playing Fiendish Chain as opposed to something else. I'd like to see what happens if windups play something other than Fiendish Chain, because it feels like them and maybe Gear are like the last ones like that are still really on this card, as opposed to something like Compulsory Evacuation Device, because I just love Compulse in this format. I think it's really good. Extra deck, nothing out of the ordinary here that you see. 3 dusts. The Black Horns are really cool, and then the level limit. D-Fissure is pretty standard. The Ems and stuff is standard. Snowman, not so much. It's like, again, if you're going to be seeing Hero Beat, yeah, play this card. This card's good against that deck. But the level limit is really cool. I like this as like a stall option against against deck like Chaos Dragons. But the Black Horns are pretty interesting. I didn't even think about this against a deck like Chaos Dragons. Obviously, it's great in the mirror. It's great against Gear. But looking at it now, it's like maybe this card is good in that matchup too. And if you're playing multiple traps, obviously you can play like 1-for-1 low impact traps. Whereas if you're playing like, I don't know, like a Chaos Dragon or whatever, like this card's never going to get sided in. So it's interesting to see it. I like this card. I think this card's really cool. You see it a little bit more in Tengu now too. So pulling from Hat, obviously this card was played in Hat format. Like people played it back then. So yeah, cool to see a card like Blackhorn making an appearance. First of the 2 Chaos Dragon lists, odd to see double Card Trooper in the main. Again, if you're expecting Gear, this card's not as good. A lot of lists have been going to 1 or 0. I think I'm on 1 at the moment. Milling in the main phase is fairly important, but I don't know if this card is necessarily a 2 of. Weird to see 3 Maxi, 2 Veiler as opposed to the other way around. That's typically your ratio the other way, is 3 Veiler, just because it being a light target for obviously all your banishes, you need as many lights and darks as you can for all of your boss monsters. 3 Light Pulsar, 3 Dark Flare, Dad, Sork, BLS, Dark Arm, Red MD, like those are your boss monster. Like that's typically your lineup. Like once you lose multiple Red MDs, you have to go up to 3 Dark Flare. It is what it is. You have to go down to 1 Wyvern. It is what it is. Everything else is fairly standard except no Treacherous. Odd to see no Treacherous. I feel like it's like, I've seen people say it's like, if you're going to play no traps, just play 1 trap. But I can also understand the logic where like it's a bad mill, so it doesn't really matter. And your guys clear monsters anyway, so who cares? Like the big thing that you want to clear out is Thunder King, and you can already do that. So you could just trade any one of these cards for Thunder King. If they have another monster, it's just kind of like bonus. But typically you're well insulated enough to not necessarily need it, and it can be a dead draw. In terms of the side deck, I'm a firm 3 Decree believer in this deck. I was a 3 Decree denier for a very long time. I was like, what do we need 3 Decrees for? If I have 1 Decree, I have 3 Decree. And then you just play in this 3 MST heavy format with like all of these like removal cards, and like, oh, clearly I want 3 Decrees. Like I want something for when they pop the first one. So yeah, with 3 MSTs and Heavy Storm in the format, it makes sense to just have to have more copies of this card. This card can single-handedly win games, which we saw at one of the other. We saw the last Redo Rivals, I believe. Decree just plowed through games 2 and 3 for when Aegis won that event. So yeah, 3 Decree. It makes sense. The spell Shattering, it's pretty cool seeing this like more and more because D-Fisher I think is a little bit more common than Macro. So you're able to pop Factory and DeFi with this. So yeah, spell Shattering Arrow. Nothing too crazy in the extra deck. We don't see the deck devs, even though we see the Queen Dragon, but this deck plays Queen Dragon for its actual intended purpose. So that's why you're not seeing that. If you're wondering, it's like, hey, aren't you supposed to play deck dev with the Queen Dragon? It's like, no, you can actually, you have real dragons. So yeah, nothing too out of place about this list. The one Black Rose makes sense. Sometimes you can play Ancient Sacred Wyvern, but I don't know. I just feel like playing some of these other cards is just more important, especially if you're going to play the Cyber Dragons and the Chimera Tech. Onto the other Chaos Dragon list. I'm not going to talk about the main deck because they are exactly the same. I believe the extra decks are exactly the same. The only difference being the sideboards. Return from the Different Dimension is fairly interesting. I could see this going in against decks that like play Macrocosmos. Like, oh, you're going to banish my guys. I'm just going to OTK you. But a lot of times you can't get your graveyard set up for this. So I'm interested to see what this card had, like the big utility for it. And what it's good against. Rivalry is pretty interesting. Against a deck like Windups, it's like whether or not you want to flip Rivalry or rather you'd flip Decree against that deck. I think flipping Rivalry is much more of an impact because you could just do whatever you want. Then we see the Treacherous in the side as opposed to the main board. Interesting to see what this comes in against. Probably the Mirror, if we're being honest. Fairly good against the Mirror, along with the E-Viruses. This is also good against Rabbit because you can just take Logi and Dolka and just tribute summon it. But yeah, nothing too much to say about this thing. It's how the mains are exactly the same. And then the last list here is Oscar's top 8 wind-up list. Again, we talked about the upstarts earlier. This is something I tried like 4 years ago, I think. And I kind of liked it. So I'm glad to see that it worked for somebody in like a top cut. I do like this card in this deck. You just want to be able to open Magician Shark if you can. If not, Card is really good. I did not play the card. This is interesting. I like this. I like this more than something like a Veiler or whatever. Again, you're seeing the Fiendish Chains as opposed to a card like Compulse. It seems like this is the only deck that isn't on board with Compulse. I don't play windups very much, so I'd like to hear from like more windup players about why that card isn't included. Everything else seems to make sense in this list. No Veilers in the main. You have just one in the side. Again, the Messenger pieces, if you're not main decking them, you're side decking them. Level Limit, again, another interesting card. And then the Trap Stun here. Trap Stun is, again, just so good in the mirror. Being able to just kind of blow people out here. Just flip the Trap Stun and then do your 8K. Game 1, it's obviously really good because they're less likely to have Maxi and Veiler. Whereas Game 2 and 3, Veiler and Maxi are going to show up a little bit more often because they're obviously like turn skips against you, especially Maxi. Maxi is such a hard turn skip unless they have nothing to draw into. Good players will know when there is no Gores, I'm just going to win the game. So keep that in mind on the Maxi here. Early game, obviously, if you just don't have it, then just pass. Where you pass is up to the matchup and whatnot. If you just like want to pass on a Utopia or something like that, or a Maestroke. But yeah, the pretty standard list outside of the Upstart Goblins, which I think should be included in more wind-up lists. I'd like to see it included in more. Whether or not you can get up to 11k is pretty interesting, but this deck can put out 8k like nothing. 8 or 9 like nothing. So having a couple extra turns isn't going to hurt you too bad. So yeah, I really like this list. I would definitely play Upstarts in my wind-ups going forward. Just something to try. Maybe it isn't correct. I'm not an authority on all that, but I do think the card is good, and I'd like to see more people try it. But that's going to be it for this video. I really appreciate you guys stopping by, taking a look at the list. Please be sure to sign up for the Retro Reborn Redo event in February at the end of the month here. And thanks for watching, guys.